July 1916. La Boiselle, France. The Battle of the Somme. A one-eyed man in a blood-soaked uniform stands in a trench filled with smoke and screaming. His left hand is gone. 3 battalion commanders lie dead around him. German artillery pounds the earth, and with his teeth he pulls the pin from a grenade. He hurls it with his remaining arm. Then another, then another. His men watch in silent awe. They call him unkillable. They whisper his name like a prayer. And on this day, when everything should have ended, Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Carton de Wiart will do what death has failed to do 11 times before. He will survive. This is not fiction. This is not exaggeration. This is the documented, verified, utterly impossible story of a man who laughed at mortality and lived to tell the tale. Adrian Carton de Wiart was born into Belgian aristocracy on May 5, 1880 in Brussels. Wealth surrounded him. Comfort defined his childhood. His father, Léon Constant Gislain, Carton de Wiart, was a distinguished lawyer. Rumors whispered that young Adrian might even be the illegitimate son of King Leopold II himself. But privilege bored him. Safety suffocated him. At Oxford University, studying law, he felt the walls closing in. Then, in 1899, war erupted in South Africa. The Boer War called to him like a siren song. He was 19 years old, too young to serve. Not a British citizen. His father would never consent. So he lied. He used a false name. He pretended to be 25. He abandoned his studies and enlisted as Trooper Carton. In his own words, "At that moment, I knew, once and for all, that war was in my blood." For 3 years, he fought across the South African veldt. He learned what it meant to face bullets, to watch men die, to feel the weight of a rifle in his hands. Then, in 1902, the learning stopped abruptly. Shots tore through his stomach and groin. He was shipped back to England. His first taste of combat concluded with blood and pain. Most men would have quit. Carton de Wiart returned to Oxford, but the classroom felt like a cage. War had changed him. He couldn't sit still, couldn't focus. By 1914, when the First World War ignited across Europe, he had become a naturalized British citizen and an officer in the Somaliland Camel Corps. In November 1914, in the harsh deserts of Somaliland, fighting the forces of the Dervish state, he charged an enemy stronghold. Bullets found him again. One struck his arm. Another tore through his face. His left eye exploded. Part of his ear vanished in a spray of blood and bone. He didn't stop running. According to Lord Ismay, who served alongside him, he didn't check his stride, but I think the bullet stung him up as his language was awful. The doctor could do nothing for his eye, but we had to keep him with us. He must have been in agony. Yet Ismay noted something chilling. Carton de Wiart seemed almost grateful. The loss of his eye meant he could leave Somaliland for Europe, where he believed the real war was being fought. By 1915, he was back on the battlefield. Now, with a black eye patch covering his ruined socket, he fought on the Western Front. That year, a German artillery shell exploded near him, mangling his left hand beyond recognition. Fingers hung by threads of tissue. A surgeon examined the damage and declared amputation unnecessary. Carton de Wiart disagreed. In his autobiography, Happy Odyssey, he wrote with casual brutality, "I asked the doctor to take my fingers off. He refused, so I pulled them off and felt absolutely no pain in doing it." He tore his own fingers from his hand. Later, surgeons amputated what remained. The hospital staff kept a pair of pajamas waiting for him because he became such a regular visitor. He would arrive bloodied, be patched together, and return to the front within weeks. Then came the Somme. July 1916. The deadliest battle in British military history. Over 1 million casualties across 5 months of industrialized slaughter. The trenches ran with blood and mud and the screams of dying boys. And into this hell walked a one-eyed, one-handed lieutenant colonel named Adrian Carton de Wiart. He commanded the 8th Battalion Gloucestershire Regiment. His men already knew his reputation: the eye patch, the empty sleeve, the wild mustache, the absolute refusal to die. His presence in the trenches did something inexplicable. It made men less afraid. One private would later say that seeing Carton de Wiart made them feel the battle could be won, regardless of circumstance. At La Boiselle, a small French village turned killing ground, the fighting reached a fever pitch. German counterattacks hammered the British lines. 3 commanding officers fell dead in quick succession. Chaos erupted. Men looked around for leadership and found their commanders bleeding out in the mud. Carton de Wiart stepped forward. He took command of all 3 units simultaneously. With one arm and one eye, he moved between positions, dodging artillery fire that turned earth to spray, relaying orders through curtains of smoke and shrapnel. And when grenades needed throwing, he did it himself. Witnesses described the scene in disbelief. He would grip a grenade, lean down, clamp the pin between his teeth, yank his head back to pull it free, then hurl the explosive with his remaining arm. Again, and again, and again. A one-armed man in the heart of the storm, refusing to break. The Victoria Cross citation read, "For the most conspicuous bravery, coolness, and determination during severe operations of a prolonged nature." It was owing in a great measure to his dauntless courage and inspiring example that a serious reverse was averted. He displayed the utmost energy and courage in forcing our attack home. After 3 other battalion commanders had become casualties, he controlled their commands and ensured that the ground won was maintained at all costs. His gallantry was inspiring to all. Britain's highest military honor, earned in mud and blood in defiance of every natural law. But the war wasn't finished with him. At Devil's Wood during another Somme offensive, a bullet struck him in the back of the head. It passed through his skull. Somehow, impossibly, it missed his spinal cord. His Batman, personal servant, recalled, "That's where the old man got shot through the back of the head. But fortunately, it missed his spinal cord, shot through the skull, survived." At the Battle of Passchendaele in 1917, a bullet tore through his hip. He recovered. At Arras, he lost the remainder of his left ear to gunfire. He recovered. At Cambrai in late 1918, a bullet shattered his leg. He recovered. By the war's end, Adrian Carton de Wiart had been wounded 11 times. Shot in the face, skull, stomach, hip, leg, ankle, ear. He had lost an eye, a hand, part of his ear. He had survived injuries that should have killed him a dozen times over. And yet, when reflecting on those 4 years of mechanized horror, he wrote, "Frankly, I had enjoyed the war. It had given me many bad moments, lots of good ones, plenty of excitement." Most soldiers would have faded into quiet retirement, not Carton de Wiart. After the armistice, he led British forces helping Poland defend against Soviet Bolsheviks, Ukrainian insurgents, Lithuanian militias, and Czechoslovakian aggression. In 1920, Cossacks attempted to hijack his train. At age 40, with one arm and one eye, he fought them off single-handedly, literally, armed only with a pistol. He settled in Poland for 15 years, peaceful years, hunting, fishing, a respite from the storm. Then, in 1939, Germany invaded Poland. He fled south, his vehicle strafed by German fighters. His assistant died beside him. He walked away untouched. When World War II erupted in full, the British recalled him to active duty. He was 59 years old. They sent him to Norway, then Yugoslavia. In 1941, flying from Cairo to Serbia, his plane was shot down over the Mediterranean Sea. It crashed into the water. He was knocked unconscious. The cold sea revived him. At age 60, with one arm, he swam to shore. Italian forces captured him and threw him into a prisoner of war camp for high-ranking officers. He immediately began planning escapes. 5 attempts total. One involved digging a 60-foot tunnel beneath the castle walls with one arm. After 7 months of scraping dirt and darkness, he and 5 others broke free. He evaded capture for 8 days, disguised as an Italian peasant, despite not speaking a word of Italian and bearing an eye patch, empty sleeve, and a body covered in scars. When recaptured, the Italians offered to buy him a new suit for diplomatic meetings. He refused unless it came from Savile Row in London. He told them, "I didn't want to look like a gigolo." Adrian Carton de Wiart officially retired from the British Army in 1947 with the honorary rank of Lieutenant General. Over 4 decades, he had received more than 30 military medals, including the Victoria Cross, the French Croix de Guerre, the Polish Cross of Valor, and the British War Medal. He had fought in 3 wars, survived plane crashes, escaped prison camps, lost body parts, and kept fighting. In retirement, he settled in County Cork, Ireland. He married for a second time at age 71. He fished. He hunted. He wrote his memoirs, Happy Odyssey, with Winston Churchill penning the foreword. Remarkably, he never even mentioned winning the Victoria Cross in the book. When a friend asked why, he replied that the medal had been won by the 8th Gloucesters, not by him alone. On June 5, 1963, at age 83, Adrian Carton de Wiart died peacefully in his bed. No bullets, no explosions, no blood, just sleep. The man who should have died a dozen times passed quietly into history. His story defies belief. If a screenwriter pitched this character, producers would laugh them out of the room. Too unrealistic, too absurd. No one could survive that much. No one could endure that much. No one would voluntarily return to battle after losing an eye, a hand after being shot through the skull. But the records exist. The citations, the eyewitness accounts, the photographs of a man in a crisp military uniform, eye patch in place, empty sleeve pinned neatly, staring into the camera with an expression that suggests he knows something the rest of us don't. Modern soldiers still study his leadership. British Lieutenant Colonel James Cook noted that Carton de Wiart's message, "Follow me," remains the essence of courageous leadership. British soldier Thomas O'Donnell, who lost his knee in Afghanistan and returned to duty, said of him, "Carton de Wiart is like RoboCop." Some historians argue his bravery bordered on recklessness, that his habit of turning up in the front line and getting injured prevented him from being promoted to divisional command. But those who served alongside him spoke differently. One officer said simply, "He was the bravest man I ever met." Another noted that his presence on a battlefield was enough to steady an entire unit. Back to that July day in 1916. La Boiselle, the trenches, the dead commanders, the grenades, the teeth, the impossible image of a man who refused to die. That moment crystallizes everything. When the world demands you break, when every rational instinct screams retreat, when death surrounds you in every direction, what do you do? Adrian Carton de Wiart pulled the pin with his teeth and threw, again and again, until the attack broke, until the position held, until survival became, somehow, inevitable. He didn't know how to die, so he simply survived. 11 wounds, 3 wars, 6 decades. A lifetime measured not in years, but in defiance, in scars, in stories whispered by soldiers who couldn't quite believe what they had witnessed. The unkillable soldier, a comic book character made flesh, a reminder that human endurance, when pushed to its absolute limit, can transcend every expectation, every probability, every reasonable assumption about what one person can withstand. And when it was finally over, when the last battle ended and the last medal was pinned, he wrote those 5 impossible words. Frankly, I had enjoyed the war. History has known many heroes, but perhaps none quite like Adrian Carton de Wiart, the man who stared death in the face so many times that death simply looked away.